This is a Dancing Stickman production. Content warning. This series contains potentially upsetting themes, including mind control, harm to children and animals, and death. You turn a corner and run right into the abyss.
No.
And then, boom, goes off. And there's almost like an earthquake. Everything starts shaking really hard under everyone's feet. And the abyss, right as she recognized you and Castor both as you walked into her, she slips and she goes, "What is going on here?" And Castor says, "Run."
I run wherever I can away from her.
You run the opposite direction that you were coming. You hear shouts happening from outside now. There's more clerics running down the stairs to come outside, and some of them even notice you as you pass them, but no one's really clocking what exactly has happened. But as you come outside, you see that one of the carts has knocked over and one of the larger crates has split open and there are children running out from it. And you see, as they scramble, you can see Sprout. She had gotten loaded into one of these carts and she goes running. But as she does, she runs past one of these clerics and he grabs her and backhands her.
Whoa!
Hard enough that she hits a wall and slumps to the floor. What do you do?
I'm seeing red. I run straight towards this guy and I just want to wail on him so hard. I'm worried about her, but I am just this is she's there. I need to help her.
You hear Bean scream, "Sprout!" And as you run up on this older cleric man, what are you attacking him with? Just your fists?
My claws, my fists.
Your fists and your claws? As that happens, your fingernails extend from your hands and your teeth get longer. And as you go in and you swipe at this man who is, let's say, surprised, you actually end up taking this shape that you weren't expecting and you slash him across the face. And give me a melee attack roll.
Okay, melee attack roll.
Yeah.
Okay. That's okay. 14.
So roll your attack damage.
Ew, that's my strength?
Yeah.
That's +1.
You scratch this guy on the face and he pushes you off of him in the same direction as Sprout. And as you look at her and Bean runs up, you realize she's not breathing. What do?
I run over to her and I sweep her up in my arms and I try and hold her to me and I try and hear, is she breathing? Is she moving?
She's not. But as you grab her, as you sweep her up in your arms, you feel something inside of you, in your core, that feels tight and hot, but it starts expanding. And it's almost like you actually feel physical warmth expanding from your chest out of your body as you hold her. And this feeling, it's like it comes through your hands and into her, and you feel like you're spreading this warmth that you feel back to her. And as you're reaching almost through it to her, and you can sense where her heart has stopped, her lungs have stopped. But as this warmth that you're sending to her spreads through her as you're holding her, you feel like you can almost, if you wanted to, make that start again. Do you?
I do. I just take a deep breath and I let it go.
Sprout gasps and comes back up.
Oh, thank God. Thank, oh my God.
And one of the clerics, the one that you hit and one of his friends, both of them look at you immediately because they recognize what they have just seen. You see them both decide at the same time to move for you. But as they do, both Bean and Castor knock into them. Bean he's got a little knife and he swipes at one of their legs. Castor tries to hit the other one behind the head. Castor jumps onto this man's back and he yells, "Run! Emmett, run! Sprout, run!"
I run.
You guys go running for it. Give me a little bit of a athletics check just to see.
Oh boy. I think since that's just my strength, it's still a -1.
Yeah.
Okay.
But maybe you'll roll good.
2. Great. 2.
Ay. All right, so you guys do make it out the gate where the wagon was, But as you do, again, these are full-grown adults, and they are on you within a few strides. And one of them grabs you, and as he does, and he goes, "You're coming with me, little one." As he does, though, there's a pop, and a short, plump woman with a moon face and rosy cheeks appears out of nowhere right in front of you. And she sees immediately this surprises this man, absolutely, for sure. And you see her, he's holding you by the scruff of your neck, and as he looks to her, she clocks what he's doing and how small you are, and a certain rage overtakes her face. You feel the air around her vibrating. And this is something that you feel so strongly now that you'd never felt before. But you can feel her drawing something to herself, and then she shoots it out at him and knocks him back. And she looks at you and she goes, "Little one, you need to come with me. I'm so sorry. My name is Igern, but we have to go now." And she grabs you, and there's a pop, and the two of you disappear from that place.
Oh my God.
And that was the day you met Igern. She took you from there to her home. From there, it was a matter of her smuggling you out and getting you to Uneza so that you were out of reach of these people who were looking for you. So as you kind of come back to your senses in this apothecary, hearing these people in Tuvold talking about how the children have gone missing, and you remember, you think to yourself, well, we're here where the church is. This is where all the main Taios people are. And that's who was taking the children. And so that is what you start thinking about as Ofelia is settling up at the front of the apothecary before you get ready to head out.
I'm just kind of thinking about Sprout and being an angrily caster, but also like just a mix of like worry and like uncertainty and fear, and I hope they're okay. That's my main thing, and other than all the other details, it's just like, are they okay?
You finished your transaction, Ofelia. I don't know what you're up to, Naya, considering other fashion items. Are you guys ready to leave the store, and do you want to stop by the general store and look for anything for tokens?
Since I am at the apothecary, other than the stuff that Igern asked for, how much money do we have left?
Lots.
Can Ofelia then make these quick calculations, and can she purchase a few herbs for herself?
Yes, you'll probably want to settle that with Igern once you get back, but yeah, you can absolutely do that.
After I kind of hand them the list, I'm gonna also say, by any chance, alongside those, could I also get a little bit of bread moss and a little bit of some thyme leaves, if you have any?
The man behind the counter nods to you. He gathers a little bit of that and bundles it up in a package for you.
As I'm handing the money over, I'm also going to say, I work with my father as a physician. By any chance, we came across a very interesting condition, from your experience or from what other stuff maybe your clients have said. Would you know anything about bluish tint to the skin and possibly what that might mean?
Oh, does he know about that? Sure. He thinks about it. He goes, I don't know about any conditions that cause that, but I've seen something like that just recently. I was down by the banks of the river outside of town, and they've been finding corpses in the water that have skin that's turned an ugly color, but I was out fishing with my child, and we saw something like that floating past. And we've seen them pull people out of the water, but we're not certain what it is, because no one's coming in with any kind of affliction that seems out of the ordinary.
Huh, so interesting. If you don't mind me asking, how many of these bodies have you found or heard about?
Well, I only saw the one, and I've heard about my youngest daughter was down by the docks, and she saw something too. But I've just heard around town that maybe there's some kind of issue with the water. We're not sure.
Huh, I see. And is this something that's been happening recently?
Only in the last season or so, yes.
these corpses, they are just random, meaning there hasn't been any next of kin that have recognized.
You know, it's a pretty big city. When bodies go to the morgue here and they're unclaimed, they usually stay unclaimed, but we haven't heard of anyone in town.
And then you see him stop to think, because he starts thinking about the missing children, the missing hierarch, and these corpses. And he sort of slows down. He goes,
Well, you know, strange goings on. Taios sees all.
Taios sees all.
May we make his will manifest. Is there anything else I can help you with?
You know, when they pick up these bodies, they can't leave them in the river. It's quite unsanitary. Do you happen to know where they bring these bodies?
I would assume the morgue.
And where is the morgue, if you don't mind me asking, for research purposes?
That's typically they bring them to the morgue at the ecclesia. They take care of body preparation and funeral rites there.
but you happen to know, Ofelia, the church it's behind a gated, guarded wall. So the way the town is divided is they wall off areas where people are not meant to go. So the nobles have their own little wall, and then the church has its own little wall. It's at the top of this point of land. And so it's guarded by members of the Order of Taios. So you know that if they're taking the bodies back to the church, it's somewhere like relatively protected.
Hearing that, I'm going to make a quick calculation of the money, way that I think Igern will understand, and I'm going to just hand an extra bit of money to him, saying, "Thank you so much for the information."
He nods to you and slips a coin into his pocket, actually, because that's for him. That's special for him.
Exactly. And as we're about to head out, before I actually leave the apothecary, I'm going to turn to Emmett and reach out my hand and say, "Leave it."
Huh? What? What are you talking about?
Emmett, I saw you took a blue potion. It's in your left pocket.
I don't even like blue.
Mm.
My scarf is blue.
Well, then all the more reason to leave it.
Naya looks over and just laughs and leaves the store. Like, hey, you got caught.
I think for a second, Emmett thinks for a second and remembers the treat, and she's like, she takes it out of her pocket without looking at it, puts it in Ophelia's hand.
I'm just gonna shake it, and then did the shop owner, because I was saying this quietly to Emmett, did the shop owner kind of see this?
I don't think so. I think he went on and started to help a different client. If you guys are handling this quietly,
I'm gonna just look at it, and then I'm gonna give it back to you and say, if you're gonna steal something, make sure no one else notices. And I'm just gonna hand it back to you and then walk out.
Ooh. I put it back in my pocket and I scramble out of the store.
did you guys pick up anything that you want to use to make tokens for each other?
Yes, definitely will need to.
Just while we're out on the town.
So there are like two central squares of this town, and the one that you came in is where all of the guilds, they're all together in one place, and that's what you're close to. There's another one a little bit further downhill. It's like a market with open stalls. So if you guys want to go down there and look for anything for tokens, I think that would be the place to do it.
Ophelia, what was it that you said you would have wanted?
We didn't get to that part in the conversation, but as you bring it up as we're walking, I'm gonna just say, I guess similar to Naya, I would prefer something that's a little bit practical that I don't have to really carry on my hand. I mean, I trust your creativity, whatever is useful.
Thank you. I'll think about it.
You come into this secondary square, the market square, and there's just a ton of brightly colored tents that have been set up in kind of concentric rings with aisles going down them towards the center. So you have this whole like 3 layers of stalls to go look at, to be able to pick up little gifties for each other. So I just want to know what you guys get for each other.
I think Ofelia is gonna go first look for some fabric that she can make a hat for Emmett. She's also going to find a blue ribbon, try to match it as close to the color as Emmett's scarf. She is also going to try to find some lace. It's quite expensive, so she's going to try to find something mid-tier maybe, because she wants it to still look nice, but not be so much that, I'm overspending Igon's money because I technically already have. And then I'm going to try to find some flowers, but specifically, I'm going to look for some gladiolus, perhaps, and some daffodils as well.
You find a market vendor selling flowers and are able to, definitely the daffodils you're able to find. And you also find a market vendor selling ribbon and small bolts of fabric and stuff like that. So you can pick that up easily. Emmett, what are you looking for?
Do I see any fancy people walking around?
Oh yeah, tons. Let's get specific. What are you looking for?
I'm looking for like people who are wearing just like too much stuff, like accessories and like stuff that's easy to grab.
Well, I don't know about easy to grab, but you do see this woman she's wearing, actually, it's almost in the same style as a cloak that Naya is currently wearing, where it's very frilly and it's got a lot of lace ruffles. Her dress has like a big broad collar that comes down. She's got many rings on her fingers. Her hair is up. She's got it like artfully posed with some nice pins. She's very perfumed. She has a little purse that she keeps on her side, and she's got a little umbrella behind her, and she's just browsing the market wares.
Trying to think if I even want to try.
Don't trust your dice, huh?
I don't trust my dice at all. I want to... Could I run up to her and, like, if I can, grab her hand or both hands or something like that? I know she's got her umbrella, but, like, grab her arm or something. Be like, please, excuse me, could I please have at least one coin, please? I need food right now, please.
Okay, you can, yeah. Yes, you can, do you?
I do that. And I'm trying to sleight of hand a ring off of her or something.
Okay, all right. So she looks down at you with just a look of utter disgust, and she's pulling her hand. She's trying to get you off of her. So go ahead and roll a sleight of hand, but roll it with disadvantage.
Oof.
And I'm going to roll her perception.
I hate you.
She rolled a 15. Hey, you want to slip a ring off a finger of a woman whose hand you're holding.
Disadvantage?
Yep.
Nice. The dice are in your favor.
You slip that little ring off of her finger, and she goes, "Get away from me!" And she as she pulls her hand out from you, and the man accompanying her, he steps in front of her and goes, "You do not touch strangers, little one," and he pushes you back a little bit.
Ow. Okay. And I walk away. I don't care, because I got it.
All right, so you got a nice little ring.
Mm-hmm. Does it look like anything significant?
No, it's silver. It's got a little gem in it. It's pretty. It's not particularly significant. It definitely looks like, a woman who has too much money spending money on jewelry.
Right. And are we each making 2 tokens?
Yes, you're each making 2, one to give each other.
Okay, so I have 1.
Dang.
I'm gonna sidle up to Naya or something and just be like, "Hey, how's the token hunt going?"
Oh, it kind of goes. I think Naya's buying like scraps of leather and anything that looks like, just thinking back of the conversation that she had with Ofelia about lace equaling like teeth and showing your status. I think she probably from the apothecary tried to buy like a bone or a tooth of something. And she's gonna like carve something into it and hand it over to Ofelia or something. So she's kind of like focused and trying to like think about all this stuff. And she's like, "It's going, Emmett. It's going. Did you get what we're looking for?"
Yeah. I'm gonna ask Naya. So you don't want jewelry at all? You don't. I know. I had. What do you want?
Yeah, it's something small and. You know what, Emmett? Whatever you'd like to give me, whatever feels significant to you, to give to me, I would be very happy.
Okay. What's your favorite color?
Ooh, maybe, honestly, I'm gonna say black. It reminds me of my father.
Black? Okay. All right, thanks, and I'm gonna walk away.
Oh, bye.
Bye.
You got this, Emmett. You've got this.
And I'm just going to think about that for a little bit.
As they're probably doing this, I think Ofelia had already made a list as soon as we had talked about it. So I think she finished her shopping the quickest.
I agree.
So with that free time, she is going to look for some food stalls because she had promised Emmett that she is going to get snacks for them.
A little treat.
Because she is the most familiar with the cities as well, I think she knows what to look for. So she's going to try to find like these chicken skewers.
Okay,
Yummy.
get a little kebab.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely people cooking food as well, cooking and selling food. I don't think that would be too difficult to find. Probably on the outskirts of the market rather than being dead center where everybody has their wares. But you know what, can you give me a perception check as you are looking for this stall?
Perception is going to be 15.
All right. So as you are searching around, you find a stall where they have their little chunks of chicken and vegetables on a skewer,
Yes.
sizzling over an open flame. And as you're conversing with the stall owner about picking some of them up, you happen to look over and you see another younger couple. The man is wearing a chain with the Eye of Taios on it. And the person accompanying him, you can't see their face, but as they turn to you, you catch a glimpse of something right at the back of their neck. It catches your attention because it's familiar to you. And as you look closer at it, you recognize there's just a little, like probably about 8-sided little stone, maybe metal, maybe something just sitting on their neck right below their collar. You catch the top of it, but you don't see the whole thing. But as you're looking at it, you realize that you have seen something like this before. A few days before you left Isadis, you saw a patient with your dad. You remember you had gone with him. It was another noble family in Isadis, but the father was a cleric with the Order of Taios. And they had called your dad in because something was wrong with their son. He had just out of the blue gone absolutely feral and attacked his mother. Your dad was called in to treat his mother and to look at the boy and see what was going on with him. You remember that really distinctly because that was the day of the solstice. And you remember that when you were called in, you actually sat with the mother and you helped her because that was more a matter of like she needed a little bit of stitches. There's just some cleanup to be done, make sure she didn't get an infection, anything like that. The kid had managed to slice open some of her skin with his nails. This was the Saint Dur family. Her name was Tiberia. As you were sitting with her and talking, she'd said, there was something on his neck at the back. And when I reached for it, when I tried to pull it off, it was stuck there. And when I pulled it, that's when he turned and that's when he attacked me. So you had treated her and had no problem, but your father had gone to see the boy, Fallman. He described this to you later that day when you returned. He had tried to do the same thing to remove whatever he had found from the back of that boy's neck. But the same thing happened. The kid went wild and he had to be restrained by some of the servants in the household. So actually what had happened is you had left because you were going to come back. Your father wanted to talk to an associate of his who is in town, a chemist named Liev. So you'd come home. You had both done sort of like a postmortem for the day to talk about what had happened. You'd successfully treated the mother and you had your dinner. You know, that night you'd gone out to the garden as you normally do. But what was really unusual was you wound up falling asleep out there. Let me ask you this. So the garden is a little courtyard at the back of your home. You guys had pulled up through the canals in your boat to the front of the home. And I think after you and your father had cleaned up and eaten dinner, you headed out back. So it's a lovely little walled garden with little sectioned off areas. One of them your family keeps a small shrine to Nox, and the other they keep a small shrine to Adir, the god of growth and healing. Where do you go when you come home to decompress from your work?
I think as we're doing post-mortem as well, I think as we're both kind of washing our hands, I'm also going to turn to my father, and depending on this, I think it'll also tell me where I need to go. Father, the mom, Tiberia, was talking about that there was a stone in the back of the boy's neck. What did you see?
The child had a small 8-sided. I'm not actually certain exactly what it was, but whatever it was lodged into him harder than I could remove easily. But I was unable to remove it easily anyway because the boy reacted as soon as I touched it. His family servants had to restrain him, and I determined we'll need to subdue the child before I can properly examine it, because you saw what he did to his mother, and he was trying to do the same to me. I'm not certain what it was, though. I'm contacting Leah if he's in town.
Oh, is he? Okay.
Yes, he's on his circuit. He's in town. He's excellent with drafts, so I think I'm going to have him examine the child with me, and we can perhaps allow the boy to rest while we examine him tomorrow.
There were such clean cuts. It was intentional. There was a violent will behind it. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. And I turned to him because why would there be something lodged in his neck? Did it seem like it was thrown? Was it something that was there surgically?
Your dad looks extremely concerned. He's a tall man with dark hair and a big beard, and his brow is furrowed. You recognize this look because it's the same one that he does when he is getting ready for the day. He goes, I don't know. I don't know what it was, and I'm worried because it was right over his spinal cord, and I could not remove it easily. I haven't seen anything like this, but it concerns me very much, which is why I want to get a second set of eyes on the child.
I think when my father says, I don't know, and he repeats it, I think that's when there's a small creep of fear, because my dad has seen a lot through his years of experience, and I with him. So for him to say, I don't know, says this is something almost like beyond our expertise. And I think with this sentiment, when I go into the garden, I think I'm not going to go to either the shrines of Adir or Nox. I'm going to go to the middle near the back, near one of the trees that are growing. It's not a big tree, but like it's sort of like a young tree, I would imagine. And I just kind of sit amongst its roots as I lean back. And this is kind of like the place I go when I'm thinking.
Okay. Well, so what was interesting about this day was that your father actually had called you to accompany him to the Saint Dur household in the middle of your lessons with your uncle Ovund. And you had been a little bummed because you and Ovund had been planning to go and observe the eclipse. But because your father called you, you were with him when it happened. So you didn't get to see that. And instead, what you saw was an incredibly disturbing disruption in this household of these people who are essentially neighbors to you. They live in the same town. This wasn't even you need to cross the river and head over to Whitehurst. This was somebody who lives in your neighborhood. But as you're sitting thinking about it, you wound up getting just incredibly and overwhelmingly tired, and didn't realize until Senna, the gardener, walked in on you the next morning that you were still in the garden. And you woke up to the smell of mint and the sight of a small green lizard just watching you from a tree that skitters away towards your bag. And the sound of your gardener, Ofelia, what's going on here? You need to wake up. What are you doing in the garden?
What? Oh.
Did you fall asleep out here? What were you doing?
Oh, I guess so. What time is it?
Oh, it's nearly 8. Your father's looking for you. You're supposed to meet him and someone else?
Oh shoot. How do I look okay?
You look like you need to go wash up. She helps you stand up. She gives you a hand and helps you up. And as you get up, you realize that like where you were sitting at the base of this tree, a bunch of like mint has sprouted up that was not there when you sat down. This distracts Senna. She goes, "What's this?" But she's like pushing you off because she knows that you know what you need to go do.
I briefly clock that, just being like, where did that come from? But my father is there to see me and I need to hurry up and get there. So I kind of like book it towards the house. I think in the kitchen, I just briefly kind of use the water from the sink to kind of like clean up a bit and just make sure I look presentable. But like, I don't go upstairs to my room. I'm going to go to where I think my dad is.
Yeah, he's off in a sitting room and you can actually hear him speaking with Liev.
I'm going to take a breath before I enter, calm myself. And then I'm going to enter the room and say, "Good morning, Father. Apologies for my tardiness." And then I'm going to also greet Lev and saying, "It's good to see you. It's been a while."
Liev stands. This is a tall black man. He has dreadlocks that he keeps in a ponytail behind his head, sort of similar to Naya, actually. And he's wearing a long, deep forest green robe. He stands when he sees you. You've met him before, and he nods to you, and he goes, "Miss Laurel." And your father looks to you. He moves a little slower, and he goes, "Did you have a late night last night, darling?"
No, I mean, I'm not quite sure. I mean, I guess so. I'm just going to compose myself, being like, I guess so. Apologies. I don't know what overcame me, but I am here. What did I miss?
I was just filling in our friend Liev here about our patient that we saw yesterday. What can you tell him about what you observed with the lady of the house?
Well, I assume that my father has told you most about all of the other details, but the mother I was treating, Tiberia, as you know, she was quite frantic, understandably so, as her son had just attacked her, but I was treating the incisions around her neck. It was quite close, actually. They were quite near the jugular. Clean cuts, deep. Needed stitches, about 10. I would say the marks were about 3 in total. Whatever the intention was, it seemed like there was an intention to kill his mother, which is quite perturbing.
Liev hears you say this. He goes, "It's unusual indeed. Shall we head over to the Santur household and see what we find?" And your father nods. The three of you bundle up and head out where you have a home boat that you use, but you're actually going to take a water taxi because Asatis is a town built of canals. So you end up getting into essentially a gondola that doesn't take you too far out of town. You actually just go in what is would probably be considered blocks, like a few blocks away from your home to the house of the Santurs. As the gondolier pulls you up to the top of the home and you embark in front of it, your dad climbs out of the boat. Liev climbs out of the boat. He turns around and he gives you a hand to help you get out.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Your father grabs the knocker on the front door and knocks. A servant answers, and you're let into the home. But instead of being greeted by the mother and the boy, as you were yesterday, the father is there. His name is Magnus Sandur, and you actually know him fairly well because he's part of your family's circle within Asatis. And he says to your father,
"Marquis, I understand you treated Falman and Tiberia yesterday evening."
And your dad says, "We did. Ofelia treated your wife and has attended to her injuries, and your son, we wanted to follow up with him today because we weren't able to successfully determine the cause of his erratic behavior. So I have brought my associate here, my colleague Liev," and Liev nods. "We hoped to observe your son today." And Magnus says,
"That won't be necessary."
and your father says, Are you certain your wife was injured quite badly?
Yes.
And your son was in quite a state of distress.
Yes, this lady, Sandur, well.
Magnus looks at you and goes,
"She's resting."
so your father says, we'd just like to see your boy for a moment. There was something unusual happening on his back. We just wanted to follow up. Liev here is a very accomplished chemist, and we were just going to sedate the boy so we could remove this from him. So I considered this might be part of why he attacked your wife. The cleric gets very quiet and he says,
I don't know what you're talking about. There's nothing unusual on my son. My son is perfectly healthy.
Can I make an insight check on this as I'm listening to?
absolutely, yes.
Oh, damn. That's gonna be only an insight of 10.
10. What are you trying to know?
I know that he's lying because I trust my father. I think what I'm trying to sense is what is the motivation for this lie? Is he trying to tell us to follow along with the lie? Is he telling us so that we leave? I guess I'm trying to understand his intention.
I think what you can tell is that he does not want you in his house. He wants you to leave.
And this is the first time he's doing this, right? Considering that we've had a pretty good report.
Yeah, he wasn't there yesterday. So when you received word that this attack had happened, you came over immediately. It was from the mother and you treated her first. So he wasn't there at the time. You were clear to enter the house and take a look at everyone. But now it seems that he's trying to stand in your way and prevent you from observing any further. Magnus says to you,
My wife, she's been resting. But if you'd like, you can confirm with her that nothing is amiss. I don't think we'll be needing your services. Falman is fine.
and your dad says, he looks at you and he goes, do you think we should speak with her, darling? You described her as being quite upset yesterday.
Yes, understandably so. I think it would be, yes, good to follow up with our patient just to make sure that the stitches are coming along nicely.
Magnus claps at one of his servants, and the young woman proceeds up the stairs to a corridor that you see them turn around the corner of. And as you're standing there in quite uncomfortable quiet, Liev says, if you'd like, we could just observe the boy. We don't have to sedate him or anything, but between the two of us, we might be able to help. And Magnus says,
No, you will not see him.
You hear the door open and close. You hear footsteps as Tiberia comes down the stairs. Today, she was attacked on her neck, and she's wearing a very high-necked dress. She's obviously trying to cover it. And she looks utterly placid. Whereas yesterday she was close to hysterics, today she is calm. And she says from the top of the stairs, yes, can I help you?
Yes, Lady Sandor, I just came with my father because I just wanted to check in to see how the stitches were settling. I know we only had a brief amount of time yesterday.
Oh, I'm quite well. I'm doing quite well. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm glad to hear, but it is my professional suggestion that I can come and just check on it to make sure.
She looks to Magnus, and he looks at her and nods curtly, briefly, just once. She comes down the stairs, but she does not approach you. She stands at the bottom of the stairs and pulls her collar down and shows you from a distance.
I'm gonna look to her, then look to Magnus and say, I appreciate this, but I will need a closer look, and I'm going to step closer to Tiberia.
Magnus sidesteps in front of you.
Is there an issue?
You may only look. Do not touch her.
And then he steps aside.
You said that Magnus is a cleric, correct?
He is, yes.
I'm gonna say, forgive my forwardness, Lord Magnus. You are a professional in your realm of study, and I trust that you trust the profession in mine. You and my father have a relationship built on trust, which I think also follows along to me. So it is a professional recommendation that I check your wife's stitches because I want to make sure that there will be no other infection that comes into play if the stitches have not been done correctly.
Give me a persuasion check.
That is going to be a 17.
He looks to your father and he says,
Your daughter is quite forward.
and he takes the arm of Tiberia and walks her to the drawing room. Now, as he brings her around past you, her collar's still down just a little bit. And what you see as she moves past you in a way that it's pulled down and her hair is not quite covering it, and neither is the collar anymore, but there's something at the back of her neck as well. And your father, he sees it too. He grabs your arm and he says, if he allows you to touch her, do not touch that.
Yes, Father.
Magnus brings her into the room and sits her down on the chair, and he allows you to approach her. There's a little side table by the chair for you to put your bag down onto, and he stands truly right behind her as he makes space for you to examine her.
I've been already quite forward, so I'm gonna do what I can in this very limited circumstance, but I'm just gonna let out a sigh. But I'm gonna approach her, and the first thing I do, actually, rather than go straight to her neck, is I'm gonna actually take her hand and feel her pulse. Does she feel cold? Does she feel different from how when I had touched her before? So what I'm looking for is there some sort of like drug effect? Is her pulse a lot slower than it should be? Is it faster?
Give me a medicine check.
Oh god, that's not great. Okay, that's gonna be a 10.
Okay, 10 is enough to know. Her pulse is steady and regular. Yesterday she was in a like a pretty high state of arousal, so she had been like flushed and upset, but her demeanor is so calm. Her pupils are not dilated at all. She's responding normally in terms of vision. Her breath smells normal. The incision looks fine, honestly. You did good work, and it looks like she applied the tincture that you gave her to stave off infection. She's just so still, and that is unusual to you, but you're not reading anything for it that might be out of the ordinary, like drugs or like anything else, like an illness or anything like that.
Does she feel cold at all, or does she feel normal body temperature?
The thing that occurs to me is to say that her fingers are cold because she has bad circulation, because that's like every woman I know.
From my, I guess, experience.
No, she seems normal. Okay. Yeah.
As I'm like looking at the incisions and I'm saying, okay, it looks like good. And I'm just going to say, just last couple of questions. And I'm going to look to Lord Magnus and say, these are normal questions usually used to follow up with patients after an ordeal. I'm just going to turn to Lady Tiberia and say, Lady Tiberia, what do you remember from yesterday?
I was waking Falman from his bed, and he got upset. And when he got upset, he reached out to me, and he just doesn't know how strong he is. He's a growing boy, and he wound up just giving me a little scratch on my neck, and then you and your father followed up to help heal me up. And I thank you for your service.
Do you know what caused Falum to get upset with you?
Oh, he's a precocious boy. It's just growing pains.
And do you remember that you were the one who called my father and I?
Well, yes, I was bleeding.
And when did your husband return last night?
He actually speaks up. He says,
I returned about an hour after you and your father departed.
And how was your wife when you had returned?
Resting.
I see. I'm just gonna quickly glance at Magnus. Is there anything other than obviously him deceiving me? Is there anything peculiar about him that I see?
I would say, so his attitude, this is par for the course with him. He's always been a stern and not very fun person. Even when your family has hosted parties and things like that and he's appeared, he's never been somebody that you've particularly enjoyed socializing with. You just have noticed that his desire to be in between you and his family is what stands out to you, and his unwillingness to let you get close to them.
I think at this point then Ofelia feels she has gathered as much information as she could, so she's just going to give a slight nod to Lady Tiberia and say, I am glad to see that you are doing well. And to Lord Magnus, I'm going to say thank you for your graciousness in letting me check on your wife.
As you stand, she actually surprisingly quickly grabs your hand, and as you turn to her, she looks up at you from the chair and she says, thank you, darling. And you see something in her eyes that you don't know how to place it. She's staying calm. There's something that looks, just the slightest inkling of desperation. And she releases your hand, and Magnus steps in front of her again. He says,
Will that be all?
and your father says, yes. If we can't see the boy, then we're finished here. And Magnus says,
We'll have Joseph show you to the door.
and so a footman comes up and is hustling the three of you out of the house.
While I was checking on her, I forgot to ask, for sure, can I confirm that there seems to be that stone in the back of her neck?
When you were down by her, because Magnus was like right up at her chair, there was no way for you to necessarily like reach your hand around. He'd have seen you do it. So all you got was that little glimpse as she went past you. As you leave the house, you send one last glance back her way, and she's sitting in the chair. She has her head turned towards the window, and she's gone just utterly blank.
Oh, God.
So the three of you leave. You're out in front of the house. These houses in Asatus just open right up to the canal. So you're waiting to catch another canal ferry back home. And Liev turns to you and your father, and he says, well, that was unusual.
Yes, very unusual. I'm going to turn to my dad and say, Father, you know Lord Magnus the best. He is your friend after all. Did anything strike you as odd?
Your dad is fuming. You recognize it because you know what it's like when he gets mad. His bedside manner is so friggin' chill. So if he gets mad, it's more a matter of him going rigid practically and just being even more in control than he normally is. His voice is like tight and clipped, and he says, that man is not my friend, and I am quite concerned about what it is he is attempting to hide, because you saw, he looks to Liev and to you, he says, we all could see that, correct?
Yes, definitely.
He's staying quiet. He's staying so quiet because you guys are still right in front of the house right now.
Yeah,
And Liev says, I don't think we should talk about this here.
I agree.
So the boat pulls up, you get into it, and the gondolier brings you back. I think your father stays absolutely quiet as you guys are rowing back to your manor. Liev turns to you, and he's basically just asking you about your studies. He's being friendly, catching up, and trying to sort of cover over this uncomfortable silence. I heard from your mother that you'll be doing your rounds on the Ring Road later this year to start touring to treat people in the different towns.
I appreciate Lev's attempts. I mean, I'm kind of used to silence, but just out of respect, I respond to him. Yeah, it's been quite a few number of years, but very excited to finally start my actual job. But how have you been? Any new sights on the road? I mean, you definitely travel more than us.
He starts chattering about the things that he's seen. Because he's a chemist, he's frequently just gathering plants that he can't find in certain parts of Aelia. And so he starts kind of nattering about like the different properties of this plant that he found that's over towards Lake Erin. And he's being affable and filling silence and talking about a thing that he gets, a little obsessive about, which I have to imagine you're a little bit interested in.
I am.
He does that all the way back to your house. And as you guys get off the boat and get out to the front door, your father turns to Liev and he says, oh, you are, of course, welcome to stay for dinner tonight. And Liev nods. He's like, I'm sorry I wasn't able to help. And your father kind of stalks inside. He like turns quickly and he goes to his study and he shuts the door.
Just give him an hour is what I said to Liv.
Liev says, I understand your father likes things to go a certain way.
And I can understand that in our field. Predictability is the best outcome.
He looks to you and he says, tell me, what do you think of Magnus Santor?
I can trust Lev, right?
Yeah, I think you trust him. He's not a constant presence in your life because he is always traveling, but you've known him since you were very young.
To be honest, I don't know what to think, Lev. These are all very unusual circumstances. I admit the thing that I am most worried about is the amount of deception going on between what should be neighbors.
He almost scoffs a little bit. He goes, that's par for the course with the Order of Taios. So Liev is familiar with your house and he really likes your garden. So he's perfectly happy to go spend time there by himself if you want to do anything before dinner. But I think you're right. And it is about an hour before your dad comes out of the room. Your mom, I think she's out and working. But
yeah, they both work.
She's probably out, and it had been your father's intention to take care of this today, and that didn't happen. The three of you meet out in the garden, and Senna actually joins you, and she brings you some tea. She hands each of you a nice hot cup of mint tea.
I appreciate it after kind of what happened this day and all the things that I'm trying to ruminate over, so tea is always welcome. But yeah, I do take a sip.
When she approaches you, you're actually off by yourself, and your father and Liev are talking to each other. And so as soon as you drink this tea, something starts gurgling inside of you. And you're like, oh no. It starts in your stomach. But you know how when your stomach gurgles, you get that weird, like, empty, vibrating feeling?
Yeah.
That same thing starts happening everywhere in your body. You feel this, like, kind of empty, gurgling, expanding sensation. And as you drink the tea, you look at the cup and it's way smaller in your hand than it was just a second ago. And you look up and you realize your line of vision on the garden is almost up by the wall, and it's getting higher up every second. And you look over and you see your father and you see Liev, and they are both taller than the trees in this garden. And you're at about an eye level with them. And you actually hear a scream from the kitchen and a crash of silverware as a window breaks out and a large arm comes through it. And then there's this, like, shattering sound as something hits the top of the kitchen and it splits in two. And Senna, she too has just tripled, quadrupled in height and size, and it ripped through the ceiling of your kitchen. And as you all look at each other and you're utterly bewildered, the person who looks the most like he recognizes what's going on is Liev.
What's going on?
Except that when you say it, it's more like,
what's going on?
Because your lungs are like 6 times bigger than they used to be. Your father is in a kind of almost state of, like, absolute shock. He has no idea what's happening. But as he turns, there are screams from outside of the compound of your manor as people see you rising above the walls of your garden. Your neighbors have noticed you there, and here's the problem. This is obviously magic. And you live in a town where the only people who do magic, who know how to wield that power, are the clerics of Taios. And so what you hear is absolute panic. Liev, he says,
everyone stay calm.
At this point, you all are so tall that you can step over the trees. And he moves to help Senna, and he puts his hands on either side of her face. He makes a motion, a sort of grasping motion, and pulls back towards himself. And she begins to almost deflate the way she starts shrinking back down again. But as he's doing that to help her, you hear an alarm being raised. And you can actually see it from here because there is a Church of Taios in your town as well. You can see that there are a bunch of people in front of the church who see you, and they are starting to scramble to get their boats together to come to your house.
That was Annette Lee as Ofelia, Ashlyn Sparrow as Naya, and Tegan Mack as Emmett. Sara Brink was the game master. Story editing by Sara Brink and sound design by Timoteo Flynn Valadez. Oops All Witches is a playtest of the Witch class created for the Wizard, the Witch, and the Wild One, produced by Fortunate Horse. For more information, visit the Worlds Beyond Number Patreon. Oops All Witches is a Dancing Stickman production. If you're enjoying the podcast and you'd like to hear more nerdy content like this, please consider giving us a like and a subscribe. And be sure to tell your friends. Thanks for listening.